All right, we're going to get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Max Robert, and for those who don't know me, I am the head of security for UJA. First, I'd like to thank the Friends of the Seaman Wiesenthal Center for partnering with us for tonight's program. And then I would like to thank our guest, Chief Myron Demkew of the Toronto Police Service and his whole team for being here with us for this security-focused town hall. I have to mention that some members of the Chiefs team have literally just flew back a few hours ago from attending our conference in Ottawa on fighting anti-Semitism. So we're particularly happy that you're able to join us tonight. I just want to thank the whole team at the Toronto Police Service for taking this time to speak to our community today regarding the security precautions that you're taking to just to help us keep us safe. We will hear from our guests a little bit later in the program. We also have Daniel Held, the Chief Program Officer at UJA, to help us moderate the questions and answers. If you have a question that you would like to ask the chief or a member of his team, just write in the chat, and my colleague Daniel will be packaging and just will be acting as your voice for these questions. I just want to say a little bit about myself. As I mentioned, I'm UJA's head of security. I have been in this role at UJA for about 4 months now. And I have to say that I've been in awe of the community's resilience. Every day, I'm a witness to stories of resilience from across the community. And I see good, hardworking people stepping up in incredible ways. For someone who's as cynical as I am, it has been truly inspiring. A core part of my security team's mandate is to act as a bridge between the Jewish community and the local police forces. And we do this by remaining in regular contact with senior police officials in Toronto and York region. And I just have to say that both Toronto Police Service and the York Regional Police have been incredibly supportive of our Jewish community. But their efforts over the last week and a half have just been truly astounding. I can think of no better example of police support than the rally that we held at Landsman Square Monday last week, which brought together more than 15,000 members of our community. Everything was done by police to ensure that our community could gather safely. And I think that for those of us who attended, I think it was clear that their commitment was apparent in the resources that were deployed for the occasion. As a side note, I will mention that we will be doing another town hall next week with York Regional Police. So if you happen to live in an area serviced by YRP, please stay tuned. And on behalf of everyone at UJ, I just would like to thank all the police officers in the greater Toronto area for working so hard to keep us safe. And on that note, I would like to cede the floor to Myron Demkew.
Thank you so very much for that. And, importantly, thank you for the opportunity to meet with the community and discuss, our response and what our continued response will be, and create some more awareness around the issues that we're all working together to resolve in the best way we possibly can. I'm joined today, as you've heard, by a number of members of the service, Inspector Paul Rinkoff and Constable Michelle Gillespie from our Community Partnerships Engagement Unit, and as well as Inspector Stefan Prentice, Detective Karen Bisla, and Detective Constable Nicole Osredic, who are here from our hate crime unit, our intelligence services hate crime unit. And I'll introduce Inspector Prentice after a few additional remarks I'd like to make at this time. So I think I just want to describe kind of the things that I've been engaged in the incredible, you talked about resiliency, the incredible honor and privilege I had to witness that resiliency over the last few days. On Friday, I was incredibly privileged to attend a number of Shabbat dinners. On Saturday, I had the distinct privilege of attending a number of synagogues and opportunity to address a number of congregations. In the days leading up to the weekend, I, of course, attended a number of schools and met with a number of community leaders and school administrators, and spoke with community throughout the days leading up to and through the weekend. And we clearly have heard the concerns of the community, the concerns around safety and security in Toronto. But I think it's important as the police chief and the police service to recognize that, we recognize that the terror attack in Israel has touched everyone in the Jewish community here in the city in one way or another. It's quite remarkable, frankly, and incredibly awakening of our sensibilities to be responsive to the safety and security concerns of the community when you recognize that the events of the terror attack have touched everybody, whether directly as a result of loss of life or injury, or now in the mobilization of the defense forces and the ongoing concern about those who have not been returned. It's clear that everybody is in some way impacted by what's going on, and with that comes a significant community concern here in our city. And so we want to make sure, I want to be clear that we certainly have heard the community concerns and continue to hear the community concerns, and we want to be as responsive as we possibly can to help the community feel as safe as they can and be as safe as they possibly can, while Israel deals with the situation in the Middle East and our community deals with the impact of events in the Middle East. As far as the threat environment in the city, I said this in the news conference last week, and it continues to be the case. There is no credible threat to the city of Toronto at this time, or the Jewish community in the city of Toronto at this time. Of course, while there may be no credible threat, we continue to hear of concerns in the community, and those are reverberating very clearly throughout the Toronto Police Service. And in response to that, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things we've done. We've taken a really significant whole of service approach to this in a state of readiness across the organization. We have deployed officers into the community to be proactively present across the city, but particularly throughout the downtown core in North York, along the Bathurst Street corridor. We've deployed 2 command posts, as I'm sure many have seen in the community. We've deployed proactively officers to be present in the community, to provide a visible presence, but also to engage with community and to respond as quickly as we can to situations that may be reported to us. You will have seen them sitting with their lights on, and the idea for that, frankly, came from my observations in Jerusalem, where I was this past summer, traveling on a Compassion Action visit with the Simon Wiesenthal Center. And it struck me there that in Jerusalem, the police had their lights on for the purpose of being seen. And we took that same approach to ensure that our presence is felt by the community, and the community can easily recognize where we are, particularly after now that the sun is setting earlier in the day, in the early evening hours, so that members of the community know where we are in the event they want to speak to an officer or have a concern. We've directed our officers to attend to schools and attend in places of worship on a regular basis. We are very much keeping track of that. We are receiving many requests for our presence, and we're doing everything we can to deal with those expeditiously. And I think we're getting very positive feedback. I will say the enormous expression of gratitude by the Jewish community is unprecedented. I can tell you unequivocally that police officers who are brought into that part of the city from outside the downtown core on more than one occasion have told me they're looking to transfer there. And I think that's really just a testament of the incredible, you spoke of resiliency of the community, but the outpouring of appreciation for our members. I have to thank the community for providing that incredible sense of welcoming, and our officers are feeling that very much. and it's having an incredible positive impact on everybody. I'd also like to tell you that we're going to continue our presence for the foreseeable future. This is not something that we see ending very quickly. We will continue to provide our presence in response to the community concerns. We need to hear your concerns. We want to hear your concerns. We have a number of channels we get your voice heard through. This is, of course, one opportunity, but there's many. And we will continue to find ways to hear the community's perspective and make sure that we're responding in a meaningful way that's addressing the real concerns that exist. And I think we'll talk a little later about hate crime. In general terms, we know that there is a rise in anti-Semitic hate, and this is very concerning for us as a police organization. And of course, we'll hear later about the importance of reporting those types of events. And we really, really need to ensure we're connected in a way with the community to have us get those insights as quickly as we can. Not just to respond, but to also understand what's happening and be able to see the trends and patterns that may reveal themselves from time to time that may help us deal with those who are looking to cause harm in the community more effectively. The other thing I'd like to share with everybody is just how connected we are in the policing community, certainly in Ontario, but let me just say this. I've personally spoken with Jim McSween, of course, from York, who you'll be meeting their organization next week in this similar forum. But we shared our operational planning. We shared our communications. We spoke about how that's the chief and I speaking directly. I spoke directly to the commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police, as well as the deputy commissioner for the RCMP in charge of Ontario. And I want to reassure the community that at the most senior levels to the operational levels, we are very much intertwined and interwoven with our policing partners, not just across Southern Ontario, but indeed provincially and federally. So our ability to share information and have it contextualized and understood throughout the threat environment we're examining across the country is very, very robust. So when I say there's no credible threat to Toronto at this moment, I say that in the context that I have and our policing professionals that you'll hear from shortly from intelligence service have access to all of our partners at every level, provincially and federally. So we have a good, deep understanding, and we can share information very timely in a very timely and effective way so that we can stay ahead of things as we learn more information, or as our partners learn information that might be relevant to us. So I did touch on briefly, and I just reiterate what I've said publicly, and I've been very explicitly saying this and say it every time I have a chance in front of a microphone. We will not tolerate hate, intimidation, or violence. That is not going to be tolerated. We know there's going to be a number of demonstrations ongoing. These are all events that we are very much staying on top of. Our role is to facilitate safety and security in the city, and we're going to do that. And I want you all to know that we will not tolerate intimidation, violence, or hate targeting any communities. And I'd ask you all please to just, again, reiterate the importance of reporting incidents that happen or observations you make. And I'll give you an example. Yesterday evening, there was 2 incidences of graffiti that were brought to our attention. We were able to obviously investigate them, and they're getting cleaned up, but we need that information, and we need it as quickly as possible. And we're going to actually look at streamlining reporting over the next while to make it as effective as it can be for the community to engage with us. And that's part of the reason our command posts are out in the community, so that people have a place to come and speak to us and report or discuss with us their safety concerns. But I can't stress enough the importance of reporting any incidents that are suspicious or incidents of hate or concern that exist in the community. Of course, if there's imminent danger, please use 911. Otherwise, if it's to file a report, there's our non-emergency number. And of course, we also utilize Crime Stoppers for those who may wish to remain anonymous. But the importance of reporting can't be overstated. And I'll close by again reiterating, you have our continued commitment to stand with you during this difficult time. We will stand with you and return the sense of safety and security to our communities, and return our sense of safety and security to our Jewish community here in Toronto. We're committed to do that, and we'll be there for as long as it takes. And with that, I'd introduce Inspector Stephen Prentice and say I do have to leave in 15 minutes to another situation, but I really, really feel privileged and honored to be here today with you, and look forward to hearing the ongoing discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. And let me begin by saying that I've found it incredible over the last few days, reaching out to my friends in the Jewish community and realizing how connected they are to people back home who have been affected directly by these events of the last few days. So I offer to you what I offer to them is just my heartfelt condolences. I know that this touches so many people in this community, and my thoughts are with you during this difficult time. The Chiefs provided you with some of our operational response that the service has undertaken. But I can tell you that behind those visible members that you see in our communities, that there is an entire group of really dedicated professionals that are working around the clock to keep communities safe. And they sit in behind those visible members. So you won't see them, but they're there and they're ever vigilant. And I brief the chief every day on their activities and what we're seeing. So to say what the chief was saying about being connected and having an idea of what's happening in the city, across the country and across North America, I can tell you that that is in fact happening at every level within our intelligence organization. The security section here at Intelligence is comprised of 5 subunits. We have protective services, criminal extremism, counterterrorism, international assistance, and hate crime. There's a natural synergy between these subunits, as many investigations have impact in more than one area. So, for example, an investigation that's reported as a hate crime could easily move into criminal extremism or even terrorism. Our team has experts in each of these fields, and we maintain robust relationships with all of our policing partners throughout the country, as well as internationally. Our Coordinated Cybercrime Center also sits at Intelligence. Its investigators are internationally recognized as experts in online investigation that support our entire service. In 2022, the hate crime unit was expanded in order to meet the rising trends of hate crime. This has given us the ability to strengthen our partnerships within the service to better support investigation, but also with our communities. We have also temporarily added resources to this unit to ensure that all investigations receive the necessary expert support during this time. Community outreach is vital to ensuring communities have the right information and are vigilant in reporting hate crime. We see outreach as our opportunity to engage in prevention, build resiliency, develop trust, and focus resources where they will have the greatest impact. That's why we are here today, and we hope to accomplish that with you. I'm now pleased to introduce to you 2 members of our hate crime unit that will take you through our presentation. Detective Nicole Reddick and Detective Kieran Bisla. I will let you know that Detective Bisla is a recognized expert in hate crime investigations and sits on the National Hate Crime Working Group as its co-chair. Recently, Detective Bisla also received the Leadership Award by the Ontario Women in Law Enforcement. So I can tell you that you are well served by the members here at Intelligence, and in particular by our members in the hate crime unit. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kieran to lead you through our presentation. Thank you. Sorry, just give us 1 second while this comes up. Oh.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'd like to first thank you for having me here tonight and to present. I am one of the members of the Toronto Police Service Hate Crimes Unit. I've been in this unit for almost 13 years. And, you know, I just want to share with you the level of fear that's, you know, kind of rippling through the community, through all communities. It's something that I haven't seen before. And, you know, I want to begin by saying that the Toronto Police Service takes hate crimes, the investigation of hate crimes, very, very seriously. So for the next 10 to 15 minutes, I'd just like to quickly go through just like what is a hate crime, to provide a better understanding of hate crimes and the Toronto Police Service response. So part of the mandate of our unit is to review all hate-related reported to the Toronto Police Service. So that could include hate incidents, hate crimes, hate propaganda, and I'll speak briefly a bit about the difference between all these different occurrence types. We know that underreporting is a very significant challenge. We need to know what's happening in our communities in order to ensure that we can respond effectively. And there are certain criteria that we use when we look at whether or not something meets the criteria or the definition of a hate crime. And again, I'll speak a little bit more about how the service responds to hate crimes. So we provide assistance and expertise to divisions. So anytime there is a report of a hate crime occurrence, we review it and make sure that the appropriate follow-up is conducted, that victim services is offered, and that the appropriate response is done. These types of investigations are extremely complex. They're unique, and we do regularly liaise with the Ministry of the Attorney General's office. In addition to that, we maintain an information database of all hate-related occurrences. And this is extremely important because at the end of the year, our service publishes a hate crime report, and that report is publicly available on the Toronto Police Service website. It provides information about our unit, our mandate, how we classify these occurrences, and the trends that are happening throughout the city. For example, which community groups are reporting where these offenses are taking place, as well as the community outreach initiative that our unit as well as service members do in response to combating hate. We also work with a number of other police services. The hate crime unit is one of 18 police service members who is part of the hate crime and extremism investigative team. This is a provincially funded team. This gives us an opportunity to share intelligence, to share information about things that we are seeing in our city. As we know, people don't stay in one place. Trends, things that we are seeing in Toronto are often seen in other jurisdictions. So it's extremely important for us to be communicating with partner agencies to see, is this something that's uniquely happening in Toronto, or is there a bigger trend? So to begin with, a hate crime is how the Toronto Police Service defines a hate crime, is that it's a criminal offense committed against a person or property, and it can be motivated either solely or in part by the suspect's perception of bias, hate, or prejudice of the victim based on a number of characteristics. And these characteristics are listed here up on the screen, but could include race, national, ethnic origin, language, color, and so forth. And there is no real definition of a hate crime. The definition of a hate crime is not found in the criminal code. What this means is that when somebody is arrested and charged, if that person is convicted, the courts are required to take into consideration an appropriate sentence. So that sentence, the courts shall take into consideration hate as an aggravating factor. So they can increase the sentence based on evidence that this wasn't just some random incident, it was motivated by hate, bias, or prejudice. So it's really important for police officers to show that evidence when we're putting these cases before the courts. And as I mentioned, the law addresses hate in a number of ways. The one I mentioned previously in the previous slide was Section 718.2, which is a sentencing principle. There's also the provision of mischief to religious property, educational institutions, etc. And what this essentially means is that hate graffiti, hate-motivated criminal offenses that target religious institutions, property, such as synagogues, such as a school or a community center, can carry a higher sentence than a mischief because of the impact that it has on the broader community. And then there's also hate propaganda provisions in the criminal code. And this is very complicated because they do require the Attorney General's consent. These cases take significant time and resources because context is important. So, and the provisions that are included within this section are advocate genocide, public incitement of hatred. This is the one provision that does not require the Attorney General's consent. willful promotion of the hatred, and the newly charge of willful promotion of anti-Semitism, which was added recently last year in June 2022. And there are defenses available in the criminal code, and that's just applicable to willful promotion of hatred and willful promotion of anti-Semitism. And there are certain elements of the offense that have to be met. So, for example, there has to be a communication of statements. They have to be made in a public place. It can't be in private conversation. The statements must promote hatred, and this is where it gets complicated, and this is where we will engage our Crown attorneys. And that the promotion of hatred was against an identifiable group, and that the accused communicated the statements willfully. Again, this is a little bit of legal jargon, and this is why we will engage our Attorney General and our crowns. There is a group of dedicated hate crime crowns that we consult with regularly on various types of cases. When it comes to reporting hate crimes, it's important that there's a uniform response. And this is important because it shows the community that hate is not to be tolerated, that we want to have our officers there to document, photograph, collect evidence, canvass the neighborhood for video, because this is essentially the evidence that we're going to need to show the courts that, yes, this was a criminal offense, but we believe that the property or the person was targeted. And oftentimes this information can be missed. So it's really important for our officers to be asking specific questions. And, you know, sometimes victims don't come forward with that information right away because it can be humiliating, right? Or because they themselves may not be aware that they've been a victim of a hate crime. So there are specific questions that we train our officers at the police college through various means of training to make sure that we can identify these occurrences. We also have filters in place. So when officers do take a report, there is a specific flag in the reporting system that when they check off yes or suspected, as we encourage them to err on the side of caution so that we can make the determined classification as to whether or not something rises or an occurrence rises to the level of hate, our unit is notified. Once that report is generated by the primary response officer, they are required, according to our procedure, to notify their detective sergeant and our unit. And oftentimes they will do this at the scene, so we can provide immediate support and guidance. And then that report goes to the divisional hate crime coordinator, and then it comes to our unit for final review. And depending on the nature of those cases, our unit will take over some investigations. Hate propaganda investigations are part of our mandate. We will investigate those investigations. And when I'm talking about hate propaganda, I'm talking about speech, any sort of communication, which is either a flyer, a broadcast, a speech, so forth. And, sometimes the question we often get is, well, how do you determine hate? And this can be very challenging because oftentimes people don't say, well, I hate this group. And sometimes they do, but not often. And so we look at, circumstances like, where did this incident happen? Was there a specific building targeted? What's happening globally? We know that international events have a local impact in Toronto. And that's, again, why it's important for us to be talking to our neighboring divisions to ask them, is it something unique or is there something else that's happened? So hate incidents, suspected hate crimes, all this information provides us a really big picture of, why is this taking place in our city? And of course, there are sometimes very overt, hate symbols and language that we will see, and recurring patterns and so forth. The victim's perception is, important as well, because sometimes we don't recognize, or an officer may not recognize an incident to be motivated by hate. So there's usually the question of, why do you believe that the incident is motivated by hate? And any context that can be provided is extremely helpful. And this chart really just kind of breaks it down to how we classify occurrences. The main piece here is that if you have a criminal offense and there's evidence of hate, bias, or prejudice, then that is what we would classify as a hate crime. If we have a criminal offense and there's no evidence of hate, bias, or prejudice, then that would be simply classified as a criminal offense. So I'll give you an example of that. That would be, for example, let's say a happy face that's drawn on a building, with spray paint. So there's graffiti, but we don't have evidence of hate, bias, or prejudice. So in that instance, that occurrence would be classified as a criminal offense. On the other hand, if there's mischief, graffiti being spray painted, and it's a swastika or, the letters KKK, in that case, we would classify the occurrence as a hate crime, because what is the motivation there? An individual could spray any language, any symbol, any wording, but that language or symbol is chosen to share a message, and the message being, you're not wanted, you're not welcome. In hate incidents, that's when you have evidence of hate, bias, or prejudice, but there's no criminality. An example of that could be a racial slur or hateful comments. So it hasn't quite reached the threshold of a hate crime. And we know that just based on our past data and based on previous reports that have been published by our service, that there's various factors that can affect fluctuation in reporting. As we can see, here are some of the numbers. During the pandemic, we saw a rise in hate crimes, specifically targeting specific communities. And in those cases, we look at, well, why is this happening? I have no doubt with what's happening right now globally that we will see an increase in hate crime reporting, and specifically in the Jewish community, incidents that are targeting members of the Jewish community, as well as other community groups as well. So this is all very important for us because it tells us what's happening, possible reasons why. And why is it important to report hate crimes? Well, we know that underreporting is a huge issue, and we know that just an overall, if we look at the overall crimes, hate crimes represent less than 1% of total crimes, but yet it has, it generates so much attention in the media amongst our communities. And the simple reason is because of the fear that is generated. I've seen a great level of fear over the past week and a half in, within members of the Jewish community and other communities as well, because we're all vulnerable to these types of crimes. People are targeted because of not how they may look or how they're perceived to look. And that is, that is something that should be concerning to all community groups. And it can create isolation, stress, and there's, it's well documented in various reports, the psychological impact of these types of crimes. And, as the chief mentioned earlier, it's extremely important to report, and there are various means to report. If it's a non-emergency, non-life-threatening incident, we encourage community members to contact the non-emergency number 416-808-2222. Or if it's an emergent incident, that's one of, threatening to life or property, then members should call, or individuals should call 911. It's really important to protect and document evidence if it's safe to do so, and make mention of utterances and slurs or any information that will give us, evidence that the incident was motivated by hate, bias, or prejudice. It wasn't just some random incident. And obviously, people can report anonymously as well through Crime Stoppers at 416-222-TIPS. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Karen. I'm going to ask Karen a question because I think that it's, something that it bears the obvious to ask this because of what we're seeing in community, to date. And it's a very complex set of legal frameworks around hate crime, hate speech, those sorts of issues. So I know that in your community, when you see, visuals on television of thousands of people, protesting, and some might be waving a Taliban flag or wearing a Hamas bandana, and they're shouting, awful things like "death to Jews" or we agree with Hitler or things of that nature. And it's hard to understand in our legal framework what the police's authority is to enforce some of those crimes, and are they in fact crimes? And it's one thing to say, well, is it a crime of humanity because it's wrong? It's another thing as to whether or not it constitutes a criminal offense that we can then take action and charge people for. So I think that that's something that's probably on a lot of people's minds right now. And I think we'd be, if you could maybe just give some context around that specific situation, what applies.
So we're looking at hate propaganda investigations and in terms of hate, everything is reviewed on a case-by-case basis. So really, context matters and the words matter. You know, what is being said, who is it being said by, and are we able to identify the person who's making those statements? Because if we're unable to identify the individual, then who are we going to charge, right? So, and then I understand from my own experience and, you know, from hearing from complaints and community members that some of these chants, some of these languages, some of these speeches aren't necessarily in English. So we do have a process to have all speech translated. And even when it comes to speech that's made in English or spoken in English, we have that transcribed as well. And all that information is presented to the Attorney General's office because the criminal code clearly states that no criminal proceeding shall take place without the consent of the Attorney General's office. But our job as investigators is to gather the evidence, gather video, gather statements. So any statements, any witness statements, flyers, recording of speech is extremely important. And, you know, we know that some people have no issues with making hateful statements. And sometimes in those cases, it's easy to, you know, identify those individuals. When it becomes challenging is when you have a crowd of maybe 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people chanting to try and identify those individuals. I hope that helps to answer the question.
Yeah, and certainly when we attend rallies here at Intelligence Services, we have members attend these rallies, and they do collect evidence, and they do take we do take our own video so that we can preserve evidence. So we certainly do take every available opportunity to gather that evidence so that we can bring prosecutions. And I should mention that Karen has had the first successful prosecution of hate propaganda in the country. So you have the right person at the helm here leading these investigations, and you can have confidence that if there's accountability to be had in this space, that the team here is that team that will do that. So you can have confidence in that. There's also, you know, another side to this where, you know, perhaps there aren't criminal offenses that can be prosecuted, but certainly there is information that draws our attention to certain individuals because of, you know, who they represent to support, and we're always interested in who those individuals are. So there's also a whole other body of work that goes into identifying people that show overt support for terrorist organizations that we certainly have an interest in here at Intelligence, and we share that information with our partners in an attempt to identify some of these individuals and track them. So that is another body of work that we do engage in when we go to these events. So subject to, I'll just maybe turn it back over to Maxime or whoever's going to moderate any of the questions, and we'll see if we can answer some more questions.
I think I'm going to cede the floor to my colleague Dan Held, who has been following the Q&A that have been trickling in, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. Wish me luck. Trickling in may not be the right word, pouring in, but we will do our best. And thank you to everyone who's asking questions. Let me start by saying every question and many non-questions start by expressing their thanks to Toronto Police, to the community security infrastructure. There is this overwhelming sense of gratitude and security that's offered by you. So I could start every question by saying that, but I will offer that as a blanket.
Thank you.
There have been a number of questions related specifically to protests, pro-Palestinian protests happening in the city of Toronto, and often the violent rhetoric that is coming out of those protests. What can be done about them? What is being done about them? Especially recognizing that we are intentionally not there in order to report them. What is police doing, and what can be done?
Over the past week and a half, members of our hate crime unit have attended various rallies and demonstrations.
Sorry, could I just ask that you sort of tilt a little bit and move in, into the mic? Thank you.
Sorry, I was just going to say that over the past week and a half, members of our unit have attended various demonstrations and rallies. And we do this anytime we do have concerns about hate propaganda and hate speech. members are in the crowds to specifically look at hate flyers, hate propaganda that might be being disseminated, and to listen for hate speech. Sometimes it's a little bit easier than other times, depending on the crowds. Again, as I mentioned, depending on what the chant is, who is saying it, that's all very important. And identifying an individual is sometimes one of our biggest challenges. How do we identify this? So what I would say is, if you are able to, or if you're aware of these incidents or occurrences that are happening in this city, please report them. Please report them. Bring them to our attention, because even if you yourself aren't there, we can search to see if this material is being posted online, or perhaps if we can reach out to other police services to see if they may be familiar with various individuals or various speech as well. But all speech, all cases, and all occurrences are reviewed thoroughly. They're reviewed thoroughly, they're examined, they're transcribed, and we consult with the Attorney General's office to make sure, A, that we're not infringing on people's right to free speech. And we bring those forward because there is certain criteria that's laid out in the hallmarks of hate, criteria that's laid out in the criminal code, and obviously based on our experience from past cases that we've been involved with.
And I'll just follow on what Kieran was saying, that in spite of any challenges that we may have in identifying people, that does not deter us. We send members to these events to capture information, to take recordings so that we can review it later. So it's not something where we walk into a situation knowing there's a challenge. We're up to that challenge. So we will do everything it takes to try to identify people and arrest them and hold them accountable when we can.
Thank you. There are a number of questions specific to university campuses, both in the GTA and I should say across Southern Ontario, where Jewish students are feeling threatened and concerned by the anti-Semitic rhetoric on campus. And there are questions specifically around TPS's responsibility on those campuses, actions on those campus, and how we can ensure that campus becomes a place for peaceful learning rather than violent rhetoric.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And universities and colleges do have a special constable cadre of security folks that have certain authorities that are bestowed to them by the board here in Toronto and by other boards, in other jurisdictions. So they certainly are engaged in policing those small areas for those things. But we do attend schools as well. We do recognize that a lot of universities have been a hotbed for this sort of discourse, and we really do look to others that are in that space to become engaged in those conversations with their students as part of their learning journey. But that certainly, we had a protest yesterday at U of T that obviously we attended, and we managed those protests as well. But when people are feeling unsafe, they certainly need to bring that forward to university administration and also through us if they're feeling unsafe, so that we can also communicate with our partners on those university campuses.
Thank you. There's a set of questions or a genre of questions specifically around Jewish institutions. What kinds of precautions should Jewish institutions be taking right now? Should they be changing any of their current activities? For example, if they were planning something outdoors, should they be moving it indoors? Are there ways to ask police officers to be at schools specifically during drop-off and pickup? Should they be informing police or others around large events that they are anticipating, like large community gatherings? Question along those lines around the operations of Jewish communal institutions at this time.
Yes, certainly. Thank you for that question. I think that we welcome any opportunity to engage with communities. So if there are events that are being hosted, we'd be more than happy to know about those events and attend them if possible. As the chief mentioned, we have command posts and very visible presence in the community. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that engagement. We're looking for, when the community is feeling unsafe, to reach out to us and say, yeah, there's a pickup time, and we'd like to see some uniform officers there. So we're doing our very best to take in those requests and fulfill those. There's been a significant resource deployment, as the chief has alluded to earlier, specifically for that purpose. So we're out there and we want to engage with you. So please keep those requests coming, and we're happy to engage as much as possible. And as the chief said, the outpouring of support that we've gotten, it's a real nice inoculation for us and our members who frankly see a lot of negative things in the world, and to have that positive interaction from a community that is hurting. It's very stark that you're lifting us up in times that are darkest for you. So that's kind of an amazing thing. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll just offer on behalf of my children, we went to visit, my 3 little girls, we went to visit one of the mobile units over Shabbat on Saturday, and they were given stickers, which for them was like a really warm, wonderful interaction. We went to say thank you, and I think they really felt thanked.
Oh, you know what? And I missed my golden opportunity to greet you with shalom, because we received some training not that long ago. The chief arranged for that, and we got lots of great feedback on just a simple greeting and how far that can go. So I'll take this opportunity to say shalom to everybody. So thank you.
Thank you, and shalom to us all. We've been asked about updates on 2 particular incidences where TPS acted. One was the incident near Tannenbaum Chat, our community high school last Thursday, when there were 3 arrests made, and the second is a TPS officer or constable who posted things, hurtful things on social media, and I know that the police acted, and we were wondering if you could give us an update on those 2.
Sure, I'd be happy to speak a little bit on that. I'll deal with the second one first, and that's just if there is information about a member's conduct where they've acted inappropriately, that certainly gets referred over to our professional standards unit, and we take that very seriously. Unfortunately, I really can't say much more about that because it is in its own process. So I'll just have to leave that there. But you should know that if people are saying inappropriate things from our service, we're certainly ready and willing to act and take action to hold that member accountable. The other investigation from 32 Division from the high school, I can say that yes, we've arrested 3 individuals in relation to that. One is an adult, and I believe 2 are youth. Those people are before the courts right now and charged with those offenses. So now we'll just have to allow the court process to unfold in relation to those charges. But what I can say is that I haven't seen their conditions myself physically recently, but most certainly we would have asked for and received conditions from the court to ensure that they stay away from that school, and the people in that community can feel assured that they won't be coming back to the school without further arrest and charges.
Thank you. I recognize you've said it, but we want to ask one more time about the ways that individuals in our community should be reporting incidences either of hate or other forms. What are the right pathways for them to be using?
The best pathway is to call either the non-emergency number, it's 416-808-2222, or if it's an emergency, 911, to make sure that there is a uniform vehicle that's dispatched right away that can collect evidence, document, take statements, canvas for video, and record everything. This is extremely important because depending on where the incident may be happening, it's important for us to capture that video because sometimes that video is lost. Sometimes, those recordings get recorded over within a certain amount of hours. So my advice would be to call the police, and a uniform officer will attend, and we will document, record all the evidence, and submit a report. Once that report is submitted, our unit will be notified, and then we will be able to provide additional expertise and support, and even attend with the officers if necessary for any additional support.
I will just add to what Kieran has said there, and that is there's no bad pathway into reporting this. You can walk into a police station, you can flag a police car down on the street, you can walk into the command post, you can phone a police officer who's a friend of yours and say, I've got this thing that happened and I'd like to report it, but I'm not sure what to do, because we all have those personal connections. So I encourage you to leverage those connections so that you can find a pathway into us so that we can investigate it. I can also tell you that command is always looking for ways to ensure that we have the best possible responses to these occurrences. That will continue to happen. We're always in search of perfection. So there will always be opportunities for us to do better. I can tell you that myself personally, sitting up here at Intelligence, I get phone calls and text messages from members of your community all the time. And that's just another pathway into reporting these types of crimes. So I encourage you to use those, but there are other ways to engage with us, and we're happy to take those reports in any which way they come to us.
Thank you. And we're really appreciative of your responsiveness. I would say the incident near Tannenbaum Chat is a key example of that. We are deeply grateful. We have a series of questions around public schools. So we asked about university campuses, and we've asked about Jewish institutions, but there are students in public schools who are feeling insecure because of the rhetoric that's around them, because of hate speech that they are hearing, etc. What are the pathways that parents and students and parents of students and students themselves in public schools can be taking to deal with these issues?
So I think from a public school perspective, you know, depending on the age group, whether it's primary school or secondary school or middle school, I mean, I think the key around this is communication. You know, I'm a parent of kids, 3 children, and you know, when these issues occur, I open up the lines of communication with my kids, and I have these conversations around, you know, what they're feeling, and what those feelings are rooted in, just to try to give them that sense of security about, am I feeling insecure because of something real that I can see, that I can touch? Is it something that I'm feeling because of what I see and hear around me? So I think that it's important to really just keep the lines of communication open with our kids, but also to engage with the schools directly and allow the administrators to know how you're feeling and ask for what you need. I think it's important to say, I'm feeling insecure about this. They're very alive to world events too, and they have a lot of supports that go in behind students and teachers in the education system. So I think it's about advocating for kids as well in those spaces, so that they can access the resources that are already there, and then being available to those. I think that's really important. And when they hear from multiple voices and not just one or two, I think that helps. It helps as well to make sure that all the necessary supports are coming. And again, I'll go back to, we have officers out there, and we want to be in those spaces where you're not feeling safe. That's why Project Vigilance is out there, and so we're ready to come into those spaces as well.
Can I just add to that very, very quickly, if I may? And that's to acknowledge that there's been a lot of talk of police presence in the high schools and the like, and whether we should be there or not be there and all that stuff. I think the public needs to know that our relationship with the school board is excellent. We work in very, very closely with the school board to find the best possible path forward. And the level of engagement that exists at the local school level and local police divisions is excellent. So if concerns are brought forward to the administration, I do have confidence that we will hear about it if appropriate, given the relationships we have with the school administrators at the local level.
And I'm going to add, it's not my role to actually add, but I will anyway. We at Federation are working closely with the public school boards and their administration, who've been tremendous in York Region, in Toronto, in Durham, and elsewhere, who've been tremendously helpful, as well as educators who are working with Jewish students and families. And next week, we'll be having a webinar specifically for parents of students in public schools. So stay tuned for that. It is our own advertising because I have the microphone. We have a question around what comes next. The chief mentioned that there will be this visible presence for the foreseeable future. Foreseeable future is foreseeable, and then what do we imagine this being in the long run? If we can think about that or comment on it.
Yeah, I'll take that stuff. Listen, I think very, very hard to say. I think that any critical thinking person at this point would recognize that we have a new world that we're going to have to deal with, a new set of challenges like 9/11 created. We will have a similar set of considerations here. in the context of Israel and Jewish communities globally, and particularly in Toronto, where we have obviously a very significant diaspora. So specifically to say what comes next, I beyond saying you have our continued commitment, I really don't have a clear answer on that because we don't know what the next thing will be and how long this present circumstance will exist, frankly. What you do have is our commitment to be responsive and engaging and be able to work with the community to ensure people feel safe. I'm hopeful that in the coming weeks, we will see a sense of normalcy return. But we know from other times in world events, these events sometimes become protracted things for communities around the world to deal with, particularly as it relates to any kind of civil expression of political sentiments and the like. So, I don't want to predict the future. I do believe we're in this for a protracted period. And you have our commitment to continue to work with everybody. But really importantly, staying engaged and making sure that the community understands what we know and what we see, and having forums like this, probably at a far greater pace than we have in the past. And I think that's something that we'll commit to making sure we do, so that as circumstances change, we can adjust and be able to answer that question more succinctly as information becomes available. But right now, very, very difficult to say, what does the future hold in that regard.
Thank you. Let me just conclude with a word of thanks. I said that every question that's come in has started with thanks. There is incredible appreciation for that statement of being with our community, of standing with our community in these moments, which for many can be really scary. I know that I work with so many Jewish institutions who you have helped build the capacity of over the last 11 days, who you have answered endless questions, who you've gone to visit, and really helped us navigate these difficult times. So we really do say thank you. I also recognize that we didn't get through all the questions that are continuing to come up in my feed, and I'm sorry for that. But I do want to note that the UJ Community Security website is an address where you can go to be able to ask those questions. Contact information is there. There is also information there to be able to report incidences after they have been reported to police and when it is safe to do so. jewishtoronto.com/community-security, or you can Google Jewish Community Security, which is probably the faster way to get there. But we want to be able to continue answering questions, either ourselves or sharing them with TPS to be able to get the right responses. And we are committed to doing that, and we are committed to continuing deep collaboration with our partners in law enforcement and Jewish community organizations and the community, and clear communications as incidences arise, so that we can make sure that we communicate to the community as best as we can. I want to thank everyone again, and really wish you all shalom and a good night.